Sheldon Creed discusses his tumultuous RCR exit and says there's no more excuses now that he's with Joe Gibbs. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove Midweek Edition. Obviously, I love racing, sports, but what many of y'all may not know is that I'm also a huge roller coaster fan. I'm a theme park nerd. A few years back, I worked at the Tower of Terror at Disney World. So this morning, I found it really cool, actually kind of bittersweet, to see the racing world and the roller coaster world collide. Fellow YouTuber Mizcraft tweeted about this. That's how this popped up on my radar. But apparently, the Intimidator roller coaster at Carowinds in Charlotte is being rebranded to Thunder Striker. I guess the Dale Earnhardt licensing deal they had expired. Kind of disappointing. Yeah, did y'all know that there is a Dale Earnhardt, well, I guess now was, a Dale Earnhardt themed roller coaster in North Carolina? There's another one in Virginia that's bigger and badder called Intimidator 305. That also will apparently be renamed in the near future. This news is a bummer to me. I'm even more bummed out because I've never had the chance to ride either Intimidator roller coaster. A couple of years back, I was in Charlotte, had an afternoon free. I stopped by Carowinds to try and get a ride on Intimidator, but this was still during the pandemic. You needed to make a park reservation, and they were sold out for the day. So I was turned away in the parking lot, tragically. So I'm sad that I'll likely never get the chance to ride the Intimidator or the Intimidator 305 in their original forms. Like, get a load of this commercial for Intimidator 305 from years ago. What is this? This is incredible. My gosh. Cheesy as all hell, but still incredible. Anyway, wanted to share that news. Kind of off topic, but it blends two of my biggest interests. Another NASCAR triple header this weekend. Stock car racing goes west for the abbreviated West Coast swing, Las Vegas, then Phoenix. This is a great chance to talk about a West Coast driver, Sheldon Creed. Dustin Albino, writing for NASCAR.com, released a great article this morning. I'll put a link down in the description below. A lot of interesting details in there I encourage you to go check out. But at the core of this piece was Sheldon Creed opening up about his departure from Richard Childress Racing, his expectations now with his new team at JGR, and where he hopes his career will lead in the not-so-distant future. Speaking of his time at RCR, Sheldon Creed told NASCAR.com, quote, "I felt like I was stuck. Some weeks we would be good, and some weeks we would run 15th that day. That was frustrating to me. There was maybe nothing that I could do about it, but it was tough to accept that. I didn't think it was me." Ooh, this reminds me of comments Sheldon Creed made this past offseason where he said he felt he was held back by Richard Childress Racing equipment. Ooh. Creed drove that 2-car for 2 seasons and went winless. He did finish runner-up 7 times, but watched his teammate Austin Hill collect 6 victories during that span. Obviously, the breakup between Creed and RCR was not only very public, but also publicly ugly. I don't think Creed's situation at RCR was perfect, but at the same time, I don't like hearing excuses, especially from a 26-year-old, a recent Truck Series champion. To Sheldon Creed's credit, though, later in this NASCAR.com piece, he admits that the time for excuses is over. Creed said, quote, "I've said in the past that I think the Gibbs cars are some of the best. I'm getting rid of that excuse now this year. Now it's up to me. I like that pressure, and me saying that puts pressure on myself. If I don't do good this year and run the same, I'll go race dirt for fun. This is a proving year to myself as well." All right, cut the BS. It's time to go get the results. If the results don't come, that's on me. See, that's the kind of accountability I like. This is a great opportunity for Sheldon Creed. He does get a lot of support, of course, from his grandfather. That's not to take away from his talent. I'm just saying that, very few 26-year-old winless Xfinity Series drivers get a second chance quite like this one. So far, so good. Sheldon Creed is off to a very strong start in 2024. He finished runner-up yet again at Daytona to Austin Hill, but then finished 4th at Atlanta. Back-to-back top 5s put Sheldon Creed second in the regular season standings behind his former teammate Austin Hill. Gosh, Austin Hill's name's coming up a ton. What a hot start for that 21 team. Sheldon Creed then told NASCAR.com about his future aspirations should things go well with Gibbs this year. Creed said, quote, "I would just love to have a paid-for ride. I want to race Cup. That's my goal, is to race a good Cup car. That's goal number one down the road, whether that's next year, 2 years from now, who knows? I could be here at Joe Gibbs Racing in an Xfinity car for another 3 years." I like that self-awareness there. He understands that he's in a privileged situation. He's had some great opportunities, multiple great opportunities. I like that he's done with the excuses. He expects to win multiple races this year, and if not, he's going to self-reflect and decide whether or not this is really for him. For the record, I do think Sheldon Creed is going to win multiple races this season. I agree with him when he says that the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas are typically some of the best in the Xfinity Series field. I actually think that success could come very soon. Las Vegas, especially Phoenix next week, two very good tracks for the JGR Toyotas in recent years. Especially Phoenix. JGR on the Xfinity side practically owns that place. Some interesting comments there from Sheldon Creed I just wanted to react to here with you. Again, click the link down below because there are some additional details sprinkled throughout that article that I found very interesting, but you'll have to read to learn more. One final topic I'd like to discuss. I saw Adam Stern, Bob Pockrass tweeting about this earlier today, but the Washington Post reports that FedEx is ending their stadium naming rights agreement with the Washington Commanders 2 years early. Why do I bring up an NFL team, the Washington Commanders? Well, there are some very direct NASCAR connections. Josh Harris and his sports group now own the Washington Commanders NFL team. Harris, Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, also bought a minority stake of Joe Gibbs Racing just last year. Joe Gibbs, of course, is a Hall of Fame NFL coach. He coached the Washington Commanders in the 80s, early 90s, once again in the mid-2000s, and won 3 Super Bowls. Joe Gibbs is a Washington football legend. And of course, FedEx is a major Joe Gibbs Racing sponsor and has been for a couple of decades now. FedEx continuing to scale back their marketing efforts across the board. This isn't just a NASCAR thing, but it could certainly affect one of NASCAR's biggest stars. 2 years ago, Denny Hamlin drove a FedEx primary scheme for 30 plus races. That changed pretty dramatically just last year. By my count, FedEx only had 13 primary schemes. 30 to 13 in just 1 year. I'm not too worried about Denny Hamlin. Look, he's a star of the sport. He has great relationships with Sport Clips, who he recently brought to Victory Lane in the Clash at the Coliseum. Coca-Cola, Mavis Tire and Battery has come on strong. Yahoo, Interstate Batteries, you name it. I think Denny Hamlin will be just fine. But the reason I find this interesting is because, as we've noticed the past couple of years, Joe Gibbs Racing is kind of resistant to the new modern sponsorship model. In some ways, they're still living in 2003. They want Bass Pro Shops to sponsor 30 plus races for Martin Truex. They want FedEx to sponsor 30 plus races a year for Denny Hamlin. They wanted M&M's to sponsor 30 plus races for Kyle Busch, or Oracle until that deal fell through. Remember how relieved Joe Gibbs was when Martin Truex Jr. agreed to return this year? I think that's because he knows Bass Pro Shops is good for 25 races. Most other teams, namely Richard Childress Racing, who a couple years ago supposedly brought in more NASCAR sponsorship money than nearly every single team, they're comfortable piecing together a full season from a variety of different companies. Yeah, Cheddar's, you can have a few races over here. Zone, yeah, I'll give you a few. You can have Daytona. How about BetMGM? Yeah, y'all can have these 5 right here. They're piecing it together, not relying on that one big shiny fish. If FedEx is continuing to cut costs and is continuing to scale back their support of Denny Hamlin and Joe Gibbs Racing, it'll be interesting to see how JGR tweaks their sponsorship model. Joe Gibbs often doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion. Obviously, he's a Hall of Fame football coach. He's also now a Hall of Fame NASCAR team owner. And unlike other super team owners like Rick Hendrick, Roger Penske, Joe Gibbs doesn't have a bunch of other massive businesses funding his racing operation. He can't rely on backdoor B2B deals the way Rick Hendrick can with Hendrick Cars or Ally. Roger Penske and his truck rental business. Joe Gibbs doesn't have the same infrastructure. I think in some ways, Joe Gibbs selling off part of his team to Josh Harris and his group last year, that kind of flew under the radar. There are still members of the Gibbs family. You've heard about Heather Gibbs, Ty's mom, who've stepped up in recent months and years and have really taken on a much larger role within the family business. But Coach Gibbs is getting much older. JGR has been a NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series powerhouse for decades. As sponsorship changes, perhaps the ownership stakes change, this transition period for Joe Gibbs Racing could be very interesting to watch. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. The FedEx news gave me an excuse to sort of just think out loud with you guys here. Let me know what you think of Joe Gibbs Racing's future down in the comment section below. That is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new to the channel and you love all things NASCAR. You're in the right place. And a huge thank you, as always, to my very generous Patreon supporters. I will catch y'all again very, very soon. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, folks.